What do you think about going to offer our condolences at the Pharaoh's funeral? Let's go back in time 3,000 years into the past and witness the day of the Pharaoh's death. And let's see what ritual used to take place. But before we begin, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. And don't forget to like. Let's go. The first thing that happened after the death of the pharaohs is confirmed is a massive storm of screaming and wailing. It begins with the pharaoh's wives, his daughters, and the maids of the royal palace. The news spreads to the entire city. And in just a moment, thousands of women gather outside the palace gates. They are led by women whose job was to scream, wail, and lament the dead for money. And remember, this is not just anyone who died, this is the pharaoh. This means every single wailing woman in the city will be there. Thousands of women create a deafening storm. They beat their faces and tear their clothes apart. The noise can be heard from kilometers away. These wailing women cry out, "How miserable are your days! Oh, sorrowful Egypt, the Pharaoh is dead, the Pharaoh is dead. Weep as you have never wept before. Tear your clothes and strike your cheeks." Excuse me, but we have to wait 70 days before the actual funeral procession begins. Wait, is that right? Isn't it said that the best way to honor the dead is to bury them quickly? Not for the ancient Egyptians. To honor the dead, they must mummify them, because the soul needs to return to its body in the afterlife, but if the body decays, the soul will be lost, and the dead will not rise again. The pharaoh's body is carried out of the royal palace to the house of purification. This is where mummification processes take place. Mummification is a surgical, chemical, and cosmetic process of absolute precision. It lasts for 70 days. Through these 70 days, the priests never stop chanting religious prayers, accompanied by the music of ancient Egyptian harps. In ancient Egypt, mummification was done for everyone, even for poor men. But there was huge difference. Mummifying the bodies of the pharaohs and the royals was extremely expensive. The material were imported from outside the country. They were rare, expensive, and of the highest quality. Only the pharaohs could afford such luxury. That's why the bodies of the pharaohs did not decay and have survived to this day. Meanwhile, ordinary people received a cheap mummification process using low-quality materials. As a result, the bodies of vast majority of commoners completely decayed. The mummification is complete. The pharaoh's mummy is fitted with its golden mask, decorated with precious jewelry, and wrapped in a layer of finest linen. Now it's time for the funeral prayers. The mummy is stood upright on its feet, as it were still alive. The high priest begins reciting the final prayers, surrounded by the pharaoh's wife and daughters. The priest says, "You now see with your eyes, and hear with your ears. You open your mouth to eat, and move your legs and arms. You are alive once more. You have become young again, and you shall live forever." Then the mummy is placed inside the golden coffins. The pharaoh's body finally leaves the house of purification. The grand funeral procession marches through the streets of Tiba, capital of old Egypt, led by the hired wailing woman. The entire city gathers, holding torches to pay their last respects. This procession is massive. It consists of dozens of chariots loaded with the pharaoh's burial treasures. Everything the pharaoh used in his lifetime will be buried with him. His clothes, shoes, sandals, scepters, his chairs, wardrobes, beds, antiques, statues, weapons, and war chariots. Even the toys he played with as a child will be buried with him. According to the ancient Egyptian belief, person must be buried with all his earthly belongings, so he can use them when wake up in the afterlife. And remember, this is the pharaoh, not just anyone. Therefore, the contents of an entire palace will be buried in his tomb. It would be unthinkable for the pharaohs to wake up in the next world and not find all his luxury and grandeur around him. What about the poor miserable citizen of an ancient Egypt? What gets buried with them? For a miserable citizen, they would place in his grave his wooden sandals, the copper dish he ate from, the clay jug he drank from, and the wooden stick he leaned on. This is where the only tools the poor man used in his earthly life. Most of the royal burial treasure was made of solid gold and inlaid with precious gems. All these priceless treasures are displayed for everyone to see, carried on the chariot of the funeral procession. a priceless fortune, well buried deep underground, serving no living soul. Such riches are more than enough to make any thief's mouth water. So, it's not surprise we're completely looted thousands of years ago, except for the tomb of King Tutankhamun. The massive procession and thousands of mourners head toward the eastern bank of Nile in Tiba, known today as Luxor. The entire crowd, along with the massive pile of treasures, is loaded onto hundreds of boats. The fleet sails across the Nile, led by the boats of the hired wailing women, heading to the west bank of the Nile, right opposite to Valley of the Kings and Queens. This is the sacred resting place of the royal mummies. During this river journey, the wailing women chant, "Don't leave us, oh great one, now you cross the Nile. Oh sailors, don't hurry, you will return to your homes," while he is traveling to the land of eternity. What a tragedy. Oh, what a disaster. No one is allowed on the boats carrying the pharaoh's body, except the high priest, who is busy reciting prayers and incantations. Finally, we reach the west bank of the Nile. The boats are unloaded, and the procession reforms on land in the exact same order. The funeral march continues until it reaches the Valley of the Kings and Queens. We have finally arrived at the entrance of the pharaoh's tomb. Hundreds of workers begin carrying the treasures down into the tomb. The pharaoh's tomb is carved deep inside the mountain, stretching over 130 meters. It contains 9 chambers, designed to hold all these processions. The 10th and the final chamber is the burial chamber, where the pharaoh's body will rest. The coffin is placed right in front of the tomb entrance. The priests prepare a table filled of food and jugs of beer. On the table, there are strange tools, a curved blade, an adze, and the leg of a calf. These items are used by the priests in the final funeral ritual at the tomb entrance before carrying the pharaoh inside. Let's go inside the tomb and see what they are doing. We walk down the long corridor, passing through chambers until we reach the burial room. Inside we found wooden boxes planted with barley. They believed that the growing barley would help the pharaoh to return to life. The pharaoh's wives and daughters are allowed to embrace the coffin one last time. Then the golden coffins are placed inside a massive stone sarcophagus, exactly in the center of the room. The entire sarcophagus from floor to ceiling is covered with beautifully painted wooden shrines, gilded with gold leaf. Next to these shrines, they place the canopic jars. These jars contain the pharaoh's mummified organs, his liver, lungs, stomach, and intestine, but never the heart. Heart is the only organ left inside pharaoh's bodies. It is mummified in its place, because according to their faith, the heart is essential for judgment and resurrection in the afterlife. Then, all the chamber doors are sealed with brick and plaster. The main corridor is packed from floor to ceiling with heavy stones and rubble. This was done to block any future grave robbers. Thieves eventually bypassed all of these obstacles. Also, the tomb was never meant to be opened again. Its sole purpose was to keep the body and its treasures safe until the day of resurrection. Finally, the main entrance is sealed with a thick wall of brick and plaster. The plaster is stamped with the royal seal of the pharaoh and the seal of the royal cemetery. With this, the burial is complete. Now, do the guests simply go home? No, no one is allowed to leave. According to tradition, a lavish funeral feast is served right near the tomb. Hundreds of servants prepare food and drink for the mourners. Huge tables are set up where thousands of mourners dine. What happened once the feast had ended? Can mourners finally return to their homes? No, no one can leave yet. Everyone must attend the evening party. It's a musical and dance performance held right outside the tomb, as dozens of male and female dancers moving in sorrowful funeral dances to the sound of ancient harps, sealing tombs, feeding the mourners after the burial, and hosting a wake. This modern tradition practiced today in Egypt are actually ancient Egyptian customs passed down through generations. When the Egyptian empire was strong, no one dared to touch these sacred tombs. During the era of decline, when the empire collapsed, every single royal tomb was looted, except Tutankhamun's tomb. If the contents of these royal tombs hadn't been looted, even all the museum of the world would not be enough to contain their treasures.